Hi, my name is Don. I run a small farm where we grow food to give away, Healing Springs Acres, and I host a podcast, Welcome to the Table, What People Are Doing to End Hunger. We've been at it for about 10 years. All of the food we grow is distributed through local food pantries, and the podcast is focused on individuals who have started their own hunger or food-focused project in their own community. Strictly speaking, this is as new a Farmall 140 as a man could own because it was the last year they were ever made. But it's still a mid-70s tractor, so, there is nothing on it that's perfect. For me, the biggest issue facing our food system as a country is that our food system doesn't work. The scale on which we try to deliver food through commercial systems has been maximized for efficiency for profit making, but not necessarily for efficiency for providing food to communities that need it. Some of those weaknesses have been plainly revealed in the recent pandemic issues that we've had with food delivery. The system is set up to deliver food through certain commercial channels, and the system is not nimble enough to make those shifts quickly so that we could deliver food, for example, to grocery stores rather than to restaurants, which is how we consume most of our commercially consumed food. I've been convinced for a long time that the solution to that dilemma is not to try to tinker with or reform the larger national food system, but rather to invest ourselves in more locally resilient, just food systems which are organized around the idea of delivering food to communities that need it rather than organized primarily around the ability to profit from that process. The role that Healing Springs Acres plays in that conversation is to help make food locally available in communities that are having a hard time getting enough food. That doesn't address the larger problem of creating an entirely local food system, but I think that's where it starts. Individual local efforts in specific communities that help create a locally resilient food system. And this is just one example of how that can be done. It's not the only example, it's not even necessarily the best example, but it's one example of how that can be accomplished. But there is a larger conversation to have, and in order to participate in that conversation, I started the podcast, Welcome to the Table, the podcast about what people are doing to end hunger. And all of those conversations are focused on individuals who have taken some sort of initiative to start a food or hunger-focused project in their own community in their own way to address the unique and specific challenges that they face where they are. I like to refer to these folks as entrepreneurial instigators, and my hope is that by lifting up their work, we can create more and more examples of what it looks like for other individuals to contribute to that more locally resilient food system with their own project in their own way. But if we don't talk about it, it isn't going to happen. Talking about it isn't enough, though. Part of my hope with the podcast is that it won't merely be a repository of conversations about ending hunger, but that it might also be a proactive resource for helping to end hunger. Anyone who has their own food or hunger-focused project can get in touch with us, and we can connect them with someone that they can talk with about how to make their project more effective. So we're trying to provide one example of what it looks like to make food more available locally and to participate in that larger conversation about how to do more of that and do it more effectively by listening to folks who've already been doing it. And those are some really fun conversations. I hope folks will take a moment and listen in. Most of the work that we do is dependent on volunteers. It's not difficult for me to plant a lot of food, but tending it and harvesting it requires extra hands. I've got plenty of land available, I've got plenty of equipment to work with, but when it comes time to harvest, having enough volunteers, as remote as my location is generally my largest challenge. Growing food and giving it away doesn't pay very well, so it's not like we can hire folks to help harvest things. It all has to be done by volunteers. So within that constraint, we usually plant somewhere between 1.5 and 2 acres of produce. Usually green beans, corn, squash, zucchini, okra, and pink-eyed purple hull peas, because I like to say pink-eyed purple hull peas. What all of that has in common is relatively dense nutrition and relatively stable shelf life, so that I have enough time to get it out of the field and get it to the food pantry and they can distribute it to users before it goes bad. But none of our goals are really expressed in terms of numbers. My goal is more about making an example than it is about reaching a certain number of pounds of food. So, each year I just harvest what the deer don't eat and deliver it to the food pantry and consider that a success. It's usually somewhere between 6,000 and 8,000 pounds. With the podcast, that project is so new that it's hard to think about how to measure what success with that will look like. The thing that I'm the most interested in is how many more conversations does that generate? How many more folks are inspired to start a new project in their community? I may or may not ever know about that, so I'm not sure how I would measure it, but that's really the ultimate goal of those conversations. I do know that with the first few episodes released, I'm getting feedback from folks who are saying, you know what, I think I can grow something this year to eat myself and to share with someone else, and that's a great place to start. So I hope a lot more of that happens. I'm more than happy to have folks stop by and help hoe the weeds. We've got plenty of extra hand tools. One thing I have observed is we get a lot of first-time volunteers. The idea of coming to a farm where you grow food to give away sounds all warm and fuzzy until you get here at harvest time, and then you realize it's just August, and it's hot, and it's dirty, and it's work. A lot of folks come once, and fewer people keep coming back second and third and fourth times. But I've gotten accustomed to factoring that in, so it's okay. However, we are about 30 minutes from anywhere at the least, and it is difficult for folks to come out and actually physically help. But I hope folks will at least listen along on the podcast and perhaps check out our not frequently enough updated blog, healingspringsacres.org, and help us keep encouraging people to ask the question, what can you do more of more often in your community to help end hunger?